Hello, I'm Cass. Welcome back to my channel. I'm very excited to be sharing with you my 2025 TBR. I cannot believe that it's already 2025. How did we get here? Why are we here? How are we here? I feel like 2024 flew by so quickly, but I'm ready to tackle 2025 and tackle some really wonderful books as well. Well, hopefully wonderful books. I haven't read them yet, so I wouldn't know if they're wonderful or not. This list has 16 different books that I want to get to in the new year, and they're a variety of books. This list has a little bit of everything in terms of genres. We've got high fantasy, we've got mangas, historical romance, magical realism, sci-fi, just so many books. I'm so excited to get into all of them with you. Most of them though, I don't own yet. I plan to buy many of these and then some of them aren't even out yet. So I'll just be popping up graphics on the screen for literally all the books except for 3. That's a 2. 3. The very first book is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wong. Katie recently read this and absolutely loved it. I have heard nothing but glowing reviews about this book, and I was so shocked when I discovered that it was an indie published book. I just love how much love independent authors are getting in these past couple of years. I feel like they've really come to the forefront of a lot of people's reading, and I love that so much. Now, the first 3 lines on Goodreads are so fascinating, so I am going to read them out to you. It says, "A mother struggling to repress her violent past, a son struggling to grasp his violent future, a father blind to the danger that threatens them all." How can you not be immediately intrigued by this book? It's a Japanese military-inspired novel, and I adored the Poppy War, and I feel like it's typically compared to the Poppy War, except for bonus points to Sword of Kaigen because it's a standalone. I just love the epic and epic fantasy, and the fact that it's a standalone makes it even better. Plus, there's elemental and blood magic, and that alone has me so excited, but pair that with the concept of this book and the amazing things that everyone has been saying about this book just makes a perfect combination for a potential favorite book for 2025. Another little bonus trivia fact about Emma Wong is she actually has martial arts experience. She's a black belt in Taekwondo and karate. I myself love martial arts. I've only had 2 years of experience, about a year and a half experience of jiu-jitsu and about half a year of Taekwondo, and I love it so much. And the fact that the fight scenes in this book are so highly praised makes me so excited because I just know that M.L. Wong drew from her martial arts background and experiences to make such an epic book. And this is probably one of my most anticipated books on this TBR. I am just so incredibly keen to get to this book as soon as I can. The next book is Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. I read the Part of Your World trilogy last year and absolutely ate it up. Just for the summer, made it onto my list of top favorite books of 2024, and I really hope that Abby Jimenez will deliver again. She has this ability to seamlessly incorporate a realistic storyline and heavier life topics into her romance books without bringing the mood down too much, where there's still fun rom-com leaning books and yet the characters are still struggling through balancing life and love and just family things as well, which seems to be the case in this book too. We're following Samantha and Xavier, who seems to have had a right person, wrong time type of moment. They went on this incredible date, truly world-changing, mind-altering, and yet Samantha has too much going on with her family at home to balance a relationship on top of that, so she begs Xavier to just forget about her and move on. Yet neither time nor distance can erase the fact that something was there between them. I'm really curious to see how I feel about these characters. I grew to love each of the characters so much in the Part of Your World trilogy, and I don't know if this is part of a future companion series or how it's gonna work. I'm excited regardless though. Abby Jimenez has become a new favorite romance author, so I'm really hoping with her new book that she delivers. The next book is one I actually own. Everyone give me a round of applause. Thank you, thank you. And that is Ashes of the Sun by Django Wexler. I totally bought this book at Barnes & Noble because of the cover. That's what really drew me in, but I mean, the concept of the book sounds intriguing as well. A magical war has destroyed the earth and 2 siblings are now fighting to save their half of the world. The rival siblings sounds absolutely wonderful. I've also seen that it's somewhat inspired by elements of Star Wars. While I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan, I just never really got into them as a kid. I can appreciate the Star Wars universe for what it is. I'm not a big Star Wars fan. Sorry guys. However, I'm really curious to see if I can spot what elements are inspired by Star Wars. I just really want to love this book, and I will do anything to love this book for I can own the next 2 in the series, because it is a completed trilogy, thank goodness. I hate reading incomplete series, but I keep doing it to myself because I never learn. But big shout out to the cover artist of this entire trilogy, because I don't think I own a book that is comparable to how pretty this book is. And I know I've mostly talked about just the look of this book and don't judge a book by a cover, whatever, but we all do it, okay? I'm just brave enough to admit that I do it. The next book is 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes. I spotted this at Barnes & Noble while I was doing my perusing, and I thought the concept sounded really interesting. But if we're all gonna be honest here, in the theme of being honest, I really like boats, I really like ships, had the word ships in, and I was kind of intrigued. I just don't typically read Greek mythology, but I would really love to get to at least one this year, and that one is going to be 1,000 Ships. This is the story of the Trojan War between the Greeks and the Trojans and the fall of Troy, but told from the woman's perspective. From what I've gathered, it's just an anthology of stories from various women's perspective during the war. It sounds epic and it sounds full of badass women, so I'm really curious to see how this book comes off. I've seen a couple of mixed reviews on this book, some saying it was a pointless retelling of a lot of Greek myths, and some say it was absolutely necessary, that these voices need to be heard. So I'm very curious to see how I feel about it. I'm not super familiar with Greek mythology. Percy Jackson and the Heroes of Olympus series are like the 2 series that have built my knowledge of Greek mythology. So I'm really curious to see if I enjoy other Greek retellings that aren't written by Rick Riordan. The next book is Frein, Volume 12. I will never shut up about Frein. I will constantly be talking about this series forever and always because I am just utterly obsessed with Frein. And Volume 12's cover is one of my favorites of the series. She's impeccable. I'm very excited to continue on. Obviously, I won't delve into what book 12 is about because 12 volumes in, I'm not gonna spoil the adventure for you, but this manga is just a manga full of side quests and adventure and friendships and love, and oh, I've talked about this series so much. And I'm not even mad about it because I love it that much. Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins is another one of my more anticipated releases of the new year, but it's also a release I'm literally terrified about. I'm not super invested into the Hunger Games world anymore. Middle school me liked it a little bit more, but I never was like a die-hard Hunger Games fan. Just as I grew older, I came to appreciate what Hunger Games did for the dystopian genre and how it got so many people into reading, and it's really a staple YA novel, truly, that so many people have tried and failed to emulate. Now, Suzanne Collins, I am trusting you, but I'm still terrified. Haymitch is a very beloved character. He's one of my favorite characters, and I can't wait to read about his story and see his depth and his growth, because we all know the character that he becomes and the things he had to go through, they're told about in book 2. And yet to dive more into detail about what Haymitch experiences in the arena, terrifying, exciting, terrifying. I didn't love The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes when I read it for the first time. I enjoyed it a little bit more because I tried to make it like more of an experience and like listen to the songs as I was like reading them in the book. However, on my first read of Ballad, it just didn't have the same charm that I felt like Hunger Games had. It's a weird thing to say Hunger Games is charming because obviously it's very grotesque and that really delves into politics and the concept of class systems. However, Hunger Games has that very distinctive feel and environment, and I felt like I couldn't really connect to Snow because I knew the type of person he became, so I wasn't a big fan of his story. But Haymitch, on the other hand, is a character that you want to root for because he's not an antagonist, he's a protagonist, and yet he has gone through so much, and I'm scared. I'm scared, but I'm excited. So we'll see how things turn out. I have faith in Suzanne Collins that she's gonna break my heart, and I'm ready for it. The next book I want to talk about is The Unmaking of June Pharaoh by Adrian Young. This is a book that one of y'all actually recommended to me, and the way in which you recommended it to me had me so intrigued that I immediately added it to my TBR without looking further into it, because I was explicitly told to not look too far into it and that it would blow my mind. So we'll see how that goes. I read Fable and Namesake by Adrian Young, and they weren't my favorite novels, but I didn't have a problem with Adrian Young's writing. I just had a problem with her character work. I felt like her characters were very flat and they felt very similar, and the way the story shifted in book 2, the characters' motivations shifted for some reason, and it felt so out of how these characters had been acting the entire first book. But this being a standalone and entirely separate from her little YA pirate duology, I'm hoping that I'll enjoy it. It's a mystery, magical realism fantasy, and I'm really curious to see how it reads and if it will blow my mind or not. I was told to not look too far into the synopsis of this book, so I skimmed the Goodreads paragraph but didn't look at anything else past that. I just really hope that I will love it because I wanted to include at least one book on my TBR that was recommended from you all. Next is Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. I was really excited about this book, but then I realized the most recent two Ali Hazelwood books that she's come out with that I've read I haven't liked, and I got a little bit more nervous because I did not enjoy Not in Love and I did not enjoy her novella Cruel Winter with You. Her writing has shifted in a direction that I'm not a big fan of. It's gone from more romance with smut to just smut, and I'm not a big fan of reading just pure smut with no plot or romance added. It just purely is smut and then they happen to fall in love with each other, but it's really unconvincing. So I'm hoping that Deep End will lean more towards her older works where they had the banter and the chemistry prior, and it feels like it has potential to feel like one of her older novels because it follows Scarlett and Luke and they're both swimmers. It's a sports romance and I love sports, so I'm really curious to see how I feel about this. But Scarlett is a swimmer at Stanford and she just wants to keep her head down, finish her degree, but then Lucas on the other hand has a shot at the Olympic team, and then I think they end up both training for the Olympics together. They have nothing alike until a well-guarded secret is let out, whatever that means. I'm curious to see. Romance books never take me that long to read, so if I'm disappointed by them, I'm not as affected as like reading a 600-page high fantasy and being disappointed because I sunk a lot more time into that than like a fun little romp with, you know, the 300-page romance book. I'm not too invested in loving this book. I just really hope that I do because like I said, I love sports. I have done so many sports throughout my life. I've been getting back into sports and I just hope that it's conveyed well. Next is a sci-fi book, and that's Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This was like the 2021 Goodreads Choice Award for sci-fi, I want to say. I've seen so many people love this book, and so many people that don't typically read sci-fi love this book. Therefore, I have really high hopes. I love sci-fi, I just never pick it up enough. And I say that every single time I talk about sci-fi books, so I'm so sorry if you've been on this channel for a while because every time I say the word sci-fi, I have to mention that I never pick it up enough, and then I should. The concept of this book sounds absolutely stunning, and if I love it, I will absolutely be reading other books by Andy Weir because I've heard many good things about all of his works. This book follows a soul survivor on a mission to save humanity, so like no pressure, but also no pressure because our main character doesn't remember anything. He doesn't remember that he was supposed to save humanity. All that he knows is that he woke up after a very long time and he's surrounded by corpses. It's a little bit of mystery to figure out what happens as well as, I guess, saving humanity at the same time. So he's got a lot on his plate and I'm really curious to see what I think about this. I think I'm going to eat it up and absolutely adore it. The next two books are actually repeats from past TBRs, the first one being Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. Every time I say Anne of Green Gables, so many of y'all are just on me in the comments being like, Cass, have you not read that book already? Cass, you really need to read that book. You're absolutely going to love it. I mean, it's a beloved classic. I'm not gonna be surprised if I do love it. I just haven't got around to reading it because I wanted to read it in the spring. However, spring of last year did not go very well for me, and it just so happened to turn to summer, then fall, then winter really quickly. So while I don't have to read it in spring, it's just been recommended that I read it in spring and I would love to. This is a story I know about childhood, imagination, and growing up. We follow this little orphan named Anne, and this couple that adopted her was expecting a little boy, but instead they got this rambunctious redhead, and I can't wait to read her story. And the next book that is a repeat is actually from my 2023 TBR, and that is The Lies of Loch Lamora by Scott Lynch. This is book 1 in the Gentleman's Bastard series, and I know that I'm going to love this. It's literally adult Six of Crows. It's got a group of 6 characters who are all very unique and quirky in their own ways, who are trying to achieve this massive heist. Apparently the banter in this book is absolutely top notch, and I can't believe it's Scott Lynch's debut novel because I have heard just so many incredible things about The Lies of Loch Lamora. I've heard it's people's favorite books. I heard that the series gets worse as it goes on, but we don't have to talk about that. I think it has potential potential as well to become a favorite in 2025, so I definitely want to get to it as soon as I can. I also realized the last two books that I talked about I own and I just didn't hold them up, and that makes me a little sad. So Anne of Green Gables, and then back to talking about The Lies of Locke Lamora. I truly think this has all the ingredients of a book that I'm going to love. I love heist books. I love morally gray characters, and I can't wait to see where the story follows. I probably will continue on this series. I've been advised not to, and just to read The Lies of Locke Lamora as a standalone, because technically the Gentleman Bastard series is incomplete, and like I said, it apparently gets worse. However, depending on how much I love this, I might just risk it. We'll see. Y'all should let me know if I should or not, because I'm tempted. I haven't even read the book and I'm already tempted to continue the series, so we'll see. But regardless, I'm so excited about this book. And I swear I have to get to it this year, because putting it on 2026's TBR seems a bit excessive, and I've owned this book for a while, so it needs to stop just sitting unread on my bookcase. The next book is a magical realism book set in Dublin, and that is The Lost Bookshop by Evie Woods. Very mixed reviews on this book on Goodreads, I will say. I love books set in bookshops. I love Ireland, and I would love to read this book in Ireland. I'm trying to plan a trip to see if I can go to Dublin. I think that would be the perfect atmosphere to read this book. Can you imagine I'm reading this book in a bookshop in Dublin, which is where the book is taking place? How magical would that be? There's dual POVs, this magical bookshop that brings people together. It's a whole thing, and the synopsis doesn't really give us much other than we're following three main characters and there's a dual timeline. Evie Wood's writing has not really been praised, so we'll see what I think about it. I'll go in apprehensive and hopefully we'll be pleasantly surprised. Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dimon is the next book I'm going to talk about. Katie and I are going to buddy read this sometime in the early new year. This book has the most bizarre and outlandish concept and seems totally outside the scope of books that I would typically pick up, and yet has all the elements that make me think that I'm going to enjoy it. We're following Carl in this sadistic game show during the apocalypse with his ex-girlfriend's cat. Do I really need to say any more about this book other than that? I just think I'm gonna have fun during this book. This book just sounds so funny, and I hope that Matt Dimon's humor is up my alley, because if it's not gonna be good. But if it is, I think I'm gonna have such a delightful experience with this one. The next book is one that I'm excited about, but also the concept doesn't sound that intriguing compared to her other books, and that is A Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. It sounds like a mix of her novel Book Lovers and then A Study in Drowning. We're following two writers who desperately want to cover this person named Margaret, who's apparently like a former tabloid princess, part of a very scandalous family. And that as a concept doesn't really draw me in, I will say. It's gonna be an auto read because it's Emily Henry, but our main characters, there's like a lot of tension because Margaret is only weaving her tale back and forth between them, so leaving out snippets from one person and the other, but they can't swap their stories because of the NDA, so there's just like a lot of tension. It doesn't sound that interesting, but knowing Emily Henry, I'm hoping she will make it interesting, and regardless, I'm excited. I do love Emily Henry, so hopefully this one will be good. The next book is Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. I don't really think I need to dive into the synopsis of Lord of the Rings. I think we all know what Lord of the Rings is here. I just haven't read it yet, and I think it's kind of atrocious that I haven't, but I read The Hobbit for the first time last year and I absolutely adored it, and I'm really excited to read more of J.R.R. Tolkien's writing as we follow the Fellowship of the Rings to Mordor to destroy the one ring that rules them all. And the last book that I want to talk about is The Geographer's Map to Romance by India Holton. Now, I haven't read The Ornithologist Field Guide to Romance? To Love. However, I've read 10 chapters into The Mysterious Society of Lady Scoundrel, so I know I already jive with India Holton's writing, and I would love to read The Ornithologist blah blah blah, that book, because The Geographer's Map to Romance is the second book in a companion series, so you don't have to read them in order, but I would like to read them in order if I can experience the main characters as side characters in the next one. This also takes place in a small town in Welsh where magic has gone askew, and Elodie and Gabriel are assigned to the case to figure out what's going on and how to fix it. However, Elodie and Gabriel are actually married. They got married for convenience. It's a historical romance, so that was, you know, quite common. However, they both have unrequited love for one another, and I love historical romances so much. And pair that with India Holton's humor, I think that this book is going to be stellar. And if we're all being honest, I feel like I've been so honest in this video, so I will keep that trend going. It also has a compass on the cover and had the word map, and if you don't know, I'm a fantasy cartographer, so I draw maps for people's book series, and the fact that it had a map and a compass, I was like, well, I'm gonna need a copy of that book, and I'm gonna need to put it on my TBR straight away. Now those are the 16 books on my TBR that I would love to read. Last year was the closest I've ever came to actually completing a yearly TBR, and with the lineup of books this year, I feel so confident in my 16 out of 16 reading goal because I would love to knock every single one of these books off my TBR. Let me know any books that y'all want to get to in the new year or any books that you think that I should have added to my TBR. I'm gonna probably leave it at the 16 because a couple years ago I had like 30 books on my TBR and I will never do that again. 16 seems to be the magic number and we're gonna stick to that. But I'm always curious to see what y'all may think that I may enjoy. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I do really hope to see you in the next one. Toodles!